Welcome to another edition of Yorkton Stories. Every 3 weeks or so, we take a look at Yorkton's past and present in conversations with people, those involved in the topic we're exploring, or those who are very familiar with it. The collective minds of Yorkton people hold vast amounts of facts and interesting stories, which we try to tap into and record. My name is Dick DeRijk. I was a co-founder, co-owner, and editor of Yorkton This Week newspaper, and have owned and operated other businesses in Yorkton over the past almost 50 years. While this podcast is largely a labor of love, we are grateful for the support of Harvest Meats and Grain Millers Canada, both here in Yorkton, and others who help out and listen to our stories. Our podcasts are heard on our website, yorktonstories.ca, where you will also find photos, links, and other information associated with each podcast topic when available. In many cases, you can not only hear the stories, you can also see and read information about the podcast topics. We can also be found on all major podcast directories, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, TuneIn and Alexa, and iHeartRadio. Search for Yorkton Stories, and you will find us. Difficult as it may be to envision for younger generations, there was a time in Yorkton and elsewhere where there was no television, no radio, no movies, let alone internet, which only dates back about 30 years. Even that is hard to believe for those of us who were in the adult world before 1994. But there was live theater, live performances of plays and spectacles dating back to the Renaissance, and who knows how long before that. Little is known about the performing arts in Yorkton when this area was first settled in the late 1800s, other than a note in Windows on Our History, published by the City of Yorkton in 2005, that states, "Early records of Yorkton show that large crowds filled halls, whether to view a local group performing or to be entertained by traveling shows. The high school held a yearly performance, and in later years people founded a little theater group, which at some point had disbanded." Not much to go on, but there are still people in Yorkton who can remember back to the post-war years, allowing us to write the script leading up to the start of Paper Bag Players. The amateur theater group started 40 years ago in 1984, and Free My Muse, the drama school founded almost 20 years ago now in 2005. Diane Holfeld, Diane Dean at the time, attended Yorkton Collegiate Institute, commonly called YCI, in the 1950s. She remembers Miss Cole's ensemble, a girls' choir led by teacher Myrtle Cole. She remembers tumbling groups, and she remembers the Air Cadets had a band, but the school did not have one of its own. She remembers school dances, with Art Gellert's band providing the music. And she remembers Open Lit, 4 afternoons a year, when students would form their own groups and provide music, skits, and all sorts of performances for their fellow students. It was also done on a larger scale, 1 evening per year, for parents and the public. All those activities seem to have been part of school life at YCI in the post-Second World War years, based on conversations we had with those who were there. What we haven't been able to determine is why it was called Open Lit. Most likely, it referred to something along the lines of open literary evening or period. In the mid-1960s, Susan Nostransky was a vocalist who won nearly every category she entered in the annual Yorkton Music Festival. I remember that because I covered the festival as a reporter. In the It's a Small World department, she became my sister-in-law when she married my brother in Alberta in 1991. YCI did not do large-scale musical productions like those started in 1967 when the Yorkton Regional High School opened. but YCI did stage plays for regional and provincial competitions under the direction of the same Miss Cole and Marv Balabuk. And of course, Open Lit, songs and skits once a month in which Susan participated, part of a trio with her as vocalist, Connie Hunt on the piano, and Sonia Coalition on violin. They also appeared on Profile, a popular weekly local talent show seen on CKOS television. When the regional high school opened, it was the start of annual musicals that continue to this day, the first one being excerpts from Brigadoon and Oklahoma, directed by music teacher Daphne Marshall, and choreography by Mrs. Skywork. Susan was in the cast, as was Duvie Lang, who went on to an acting career in Calgary, where he also founded several theater groups and appeared in independent and Hollywood movies, and still continues that work today. The musical productions weren't limited to the regional high school. Sacred Heart High School, having transitioned from a girls-only Catholic school to co-ed, was staging them in the early 1970s when Eugene Fedorowicz was a student there.
First musical I was involved in was Hansel and Gretel. I was grade 8 at St. Paul's, so I would have been 13, so 1970. And that kind of, I guess, launched my theatrical career.
Were all the schools doing, the elementary schools doing that kind of thing at the time, or was it particularly St. Paul's?
St. Paul's was the junior high for the Catholic system.
Yes.
For Yorkton. So they bust us all into St. Paul's. So that's why that happened. But then once I went to grade 9 at Sacred Heart, I got involved with, I think the very first one when I was in grade 9 was Fiddler on the Roof. And then grade 10, I know there was Unsinkable Molly Brown, either grade 10 or 11.
These are big productions.
Oh, huge. We used to have a week of plays afterwards because we used to do all the schools would come in from surrounding Yorkton, the Canoras, and they used to bring students in. So we would do productions during the day for the schools, and then in the evenings for adults, and everyone was a sellout pretty much. And then Sunday was usually the final one.
The sisters were obviously driving this whole process.
Right.
How big was Sacred Heart at the time as far as school population?
I'm guessing in the 300 range.
Yeah.
And there'd be people from the community that would help. The lady that had the paint store on Broadway, Thorsness, so she would help every year. And of course, there was a full band. We had people that could play an instrument down in the orchestra pit.
Yeah.
Costumes that the nuns would sew. Like there was usually Sister Valerie, who just passed away recently. She was the director, I guess, along with Sister Pat Lacey. The other nuns, like the Sister Christine, was a fantastic artist, and she used to do 5 or 6 tapestries that, rolled up and down.
For the sets.
And then all the makeup. They used to get other students involved in putting on makeup before, and the stage crew. Leo Misko was a teacher that was usually a stage manager, and there would be well over, maybe half of the school almost was involved in some of these productions in one way or another.
Yeah.
I think they'd often get the football team, the boys, to do the stage crew, or the ones they could convince. So it was almost 6 months of work from start to finish. I remember with Where's Charlie? Sunday was the final one, and it's kind of everybody's tired, and the sisters agreed to do one more performance for some group on Monday, and that was a big mistake. Nobody was really into it, and they said they'd never do that again. Our heart wasn't into it. There was a time I had thought maybe I should go to Hollywood after, but then I got scared of going that route. But I loved acting, and I was fairly good at it. Yeah. So, in May of 2000, Yorkton Community Theatre
was officially born. It all started with a local production of the Gilbert and Sullivan operetta HMS Pinafore the year before, where a number of Yorkton and area amateur singers and actors, led by Al Goering of Humboldt, staged a play at the regional high schools and Portneuf Theatre to raise funds for homeless children in Brazil. The quality of that show had been greatly enhanced by the arrival of Gloria Heroff partway through rehearsals. She was a newly retired music teacher who energized the entire group. By the time HMS Pinafore closed, the idea of staging another musical production had taken root in the minds of Heroff and the cast and crew. In May of 2000, Rogers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma played to 4 sold-out houses. The group staged 8 musicals over a 9-year span, following up with Hello Dolly, Crazy for You, The Music Man, My Fair Lady, Annie Get Your Gun, Fiddler on the Roof, and I Love a Piano in January of 2008. All were directed by Gloria, with her husband Les looking after sets and staging, and Marianne Schur doing the marketing and promotion. Shani Apland played piano to accompany the singers in all of the rehearsals. Gloria had a talent to be able to envision each show, all aspects of each show, and was able to instill that and her passion for performing in everyone involved, Shani remembers. Gloria and Les moved to Vancouver Island, so there was no show in 2007. But she came back for several months to direct the 2008 final show of the Yorkton Community Theatre. And now, 80 years of age, she is still writing and directing musical productions in Comox, British Columbia. And COVID didn't slow down her group, the Beach Street Players. Instead of going on stage, the group got together in her front yard, suitably spaced. Gloria brought out her electric piano, and they entertained neighbors and passers-by. Mark Claxton performed in Paper Bag Players and in Yorkton Community Theatre when he lived and worked in Yorkton from 1997 to 2005, first as a newspaper reporter and then as the communications person for Sunrise Health Region. He is now the executive director of the Saskatchewan Association of Theatre Professionals based in Regina.
Her bottomless energy and passion and commitment to a high quality of work also, her expectations for our raggedy little band in Yorkton, she just saw the potential there and insisted on us getting close to achieving it. The thought of singing on stage was just not in my playbook at all. The opportunity to do that, Gloria's belief in all of us, and her, with her support of Les, who put in thousands of hours building sets and bringing in a wonderful crew of carpenters and painters and skilled craftsmen and handy people. It would not have happened without Gloria. And I have no doubt that she had a profound impact also on my life, just in giving me a vision for what I could actually do if I focused on it.
While all that was happening in the live theater scene in Yorkton, Paper Bag Players started up in maybe May, maybe September of 1984 at a meeting at Simpson School. Maureen Flaherty Malizdravich was the organizer and instigator, and reports at the time say a couple of dozen people attended. It took some searching, but we did manage to catch up with Maureen, now Dr. Maureen Flaherty, a semi-retired professor of Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Manitoba. Her daughter Heidi Malizdravich, herself an actor, director, and theater educator, in a piece written in 2018, describes her mother as a practitioner of peace building, an active feminist, and a community caregiver for all of my life and then some, a world traveler and a kick-ass yogi. Maureen was with the group for about 4 years before she and her 3 daughters moved to Winnipeg, where her husband at the time had been working while she was a social worker in Yorkton. She continued her education there, first in social work, then in conflict resolution. What brought about your involvement? What made you decide in 1984 that Yorkton needed a little theater?
In 1983, I started talking with people at the Department of Social Services. I was a young mom. I had three. My youngest child was born in 1982, Heidi. And I think I ended up with postpartum depression, but was working as much as I could at social services as well. And the things we were working with were pretty intense, child protection, things like that. And I felt like I needed some kind of creative outlet outside of work that would be sort of to find myself in a way again. I was a mom, I was a worker, and also to connect with the world in a different way. And I kind of thought that there might be other people like myself out there feeling the same way.
Had you been involved in theater prior to that at all?
Through high school, I was in theater groups and drama clubs and took theater in school. And then I finally decided to do a degree at the University of Alberta in, it was improvisational drama and psychology. And it was through that kind of improvisational drama research that I started getting into social services as a volunteer. And so it sort of like social work and theater kind of braided themselves through my life, or my life got braided through social services and theater. Yeah.
The first couple of meetings in the fall of 84, what were your expectations and what was the response that you were getting?
I didn't want this group to be all about me. I knew I wouldn't be there forever. And I know that people's lives change, other people's lives, other people who might be involved. So I started by putting I think it was an ad in the paper, advertising for a meeting for anyone who might be interested. And I remember a meeting at the library where people like Elton Davidge and I think Bob Miller and other folks came, and we talked about what we were interested in, and we talked about what could be. And then I remember doing a bunch of theater games. I remember Elton Davidge, not the youngest guy, very lanky kind of, and crawling around on the floor doing these things that I was asking them to do. We were playing. So we started playing and discussing ideas. And that was kind of the beginning, just to see what would happen. And then we kept meeting. And the expectation was just to make it more of a place where people could play and be creative and hopefully share that creativity with the wider community. Not professional at all, just explorational, playful community.
The first play was in the spring of 85.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. It took us a while. I know we had a few struggles to get really going into rehearsals and things like that. After we decided what we wanted to do, we decided whatever we were doing had to be portable. So any costumes we made we could fold them up. I remember a character called the Mountain Man in the play. The costume was this huge tent basically that he wore. And it was John McGilvery was Mountain Man. And he stood this is never going to pass safety rules, but he stood on a ladder which was placed on a platform on top of the toy box that was on wheels. So it was my kid's toy box on wheels, and then somebody was underneath the tent wheeling John around. But everything could be folded up and put into boxes and taken with us. And I remember actually going to the first performance at a school, and people didn't know we were from Yorkton. They didn't realize we were from town, and that these were all local people doing the work. And we were just so happy that people enjoyed what we were doing because we were having a good time.
You came up with the name Paperback Players.
Right.
Why that name?
We had to be portable. The kids' lunches used to be packed in these little brown paper bags. And everything they needed for the day would go into the bags. And I remember, I think it was one of your reporters asked me why the name, and just we were sort of riffing, and I'm thinking, well, why? And it was because pieces of any set had to be put into the back of Charlene Chipier's husband's truck for any show. We didn't have a permanent place. We were always rehearsing at a school or sign or libraries, places people would allow us. And yeah, we tried to be as minimalist as possible. Everything we made, we wanted to be able to be taken apart and used for something else. To talked about being sustainable, being biodegradable, I think was one of the words we used. It all had to be portable for sure. We knew our group was pretty flexible and portable too, and it would change. We thought paper bag players might be a name that could fit a group over time.
You did have support from the business community.
We did. I remember the fabric store donated actual fabric, I think. We eventually made flats. I think it was for blood relations, needed flats. That's what it was. The lumber yard donated lumber. I remember that. And the fabric store donated some fabric. We made the flats in the driveway of my house, nailed them together, staple gun, all that stuff. And yeah, that was it. People in the community were really helpful. There was not a lot of money floating around, and we didn't really need money because people were just generous with time and whatever they could share. Rehearsals, I think we did a lot of them at Columbia School, and the kids were ripping around in the background. Denise had kids, Wendy had children, I had 3 kids, and Bob's kid. They knew enough to just not bother us too much if they could help it, and they were happy to have the free range of the halls of the school. Yeah. Funny thing about New Canadian Kids, that show was really important to us because it was a newer play then. I think was it maybe written in 84? My daughter Heidi actually directed the play here at Manitoba Theatre for Young People a few years ago, and she directed that same play. And she was lying on the chair when I directed it in Yorkton. It's kind of cool, full circle.
Eugene Fedorowicz, who had been in school musicals at Sacred Heart and was also an original Paper Bag Player member, remembers going back to Paper Bag Players in 2000 after a hiatus due to work commitments. In 84, Paper Bag Players started up, and you were one of the people at that first meeting when they got this organized.
Right. I remember Maureen. She was the person that got things rolling. I was only involved, I think, for 2 or 3 more meetings after that. And then my work changed, so I was never around, so I couldn't be involved.
But you came back because in 2000 you were co-chair.
I remember my first production then, I was the father of Timmy on A Christmas Carol. So it was a fairly small part, but I know I struggled with remembering my lines. I think I managed. And I think we only had 1 or 2 performances at the Anne Portneuf Theatre. And it was before Christmas. It wasn't that well attended, probably a little late before Christmas. And of course, it's a big theater too. Back then, you were pretty much responsible for your own costumes and makeup and everything else. So
it was a commitment.
It was a big commitment, actually, yeah, because especially a week or 2 before, we had rehearsals, I think, almost nightly. And we used to rehearse in the Presbyterian Church.
So you're not getting back into theater now that you're retired, you're saying?
Definitely not. My memory it would be so stressful. It was stressful back in 2000 trying to remember a few lines. And that was, between that and then my job. Yeah. But I did find it stressful too. So I have great admiration for people today that, have these humongous parts and are able to remember, an hour's worth of lines.
The drama school Free My Muse was established by Carrie Pengilly with the support of her mom and dad and brother in 2005. Initially, the city provided classroom and rehearsal space, but a year later, a house on Broadway was bought and renovated to be used as a studio, and they're still there. Free My Muse has a staff of 5 besides Carrie, and currently offers 12 classes in Yorkton for all ages, starting as young as 2. The curriculum includes singing and voice classes, as well as speech classes that don't necessarily involve acting. It also holds classes in Melville and Langenburg, all generally during the school year, and in summer it conducts short drama camps in Yorkton and Melville. Carrie says she has had theater in her life for as long as she can remember, From playing pretend with her creative and talented mother, to making up plays with her grandmother, to writing and directing her first play in grade 3. Born and raised in southern Alberta, she majored in drama education at the University of Lethbridge and started teaching in 1997 at the Conservatory of Performing Arts at the Lethbridge Community College. She performed with several major Alberta theatre groups and created her own theatre company before moving to Saskatchewan, where her family had moved to start ranching near Melville. She now teaches, adjudicates at festivals, directs, writes, teaches drama at Dr. Brass School, teaches dance at Dance Innovations, and with her partner is raising a son. We had a conversation with Pam Willerton, a longtime actor and member of Paperback Players, who is also on the board of Theatre Saskatchewan, and with Carrie Pengilly about their two organizations. What was here before? Did you come on the scene and it was brand new?
When I came, Paperback Players was obviously here and doing lots, and also Yorkton Community Theatre was running their musicals then still. So when I came, that was happening. But there wasn't lots for younger kids. There was Missoula, there was schools, but there wasn't something more extracurricular for them. So I feel like coming into what felt like already an exciting art scene, I was bringing something that maybe wasn't there yet, the opportunity for kids to be able to do theater.
Yeah.
Why Yorkton? I mean, this is not a huge market for a fairly specialized type of operation that you have. What brought you to Yorkton?
Well, my family, they farmed in southern Alberta and then sold the family farm, and they had wanted ranch land, and so they purchased out my Melville. And so I was still in university in Lethbridge, and then I thought, I want to be closer to my family, and so I moved here, and all I had ever wanted was to have a studio. That was always my dream, was to have a theater school. And when I came here, it felt like the perfect place because there wasn't.
Yeah.
And that was what made sense to me. And my mom was very adamant that Saskatchewan was the place to be because there was all this room, and there was room for everything and every venture, and that there was support for it and need for it. And I bought into that very early, that I wanted to be able to be part of something that was a need and that would be able to give something to the province and to these smaller communities that I, as a child in a small community, craved so greatly.
Yeah, because now you've expanded into Melville, Langenburg. I'm guessing that if it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be a whole lot of that type of activity in those kind of neighboring communities.
Well, in both Melville and Langenburg certainly have their own like vibrant art scene. But I think that when it comes to kids doing actual acting and theater, that is more unusual, even in a larger scale as well, that if you're looking in our bigger communities like Regina and Saskatoon, that there are opportunities for youth theater, but certainly not as much as there is for other examples like youth music and youth dance.
Yeah,
so being able to be a part of that triple threat arts community has been really important to me and to our studio.
You have classes for kids as young as 2 years old.
We do. We do.
I have a great grandson who just turned 3, who's quite a character. I mean, kids at that age are quite the characters,
Yes.
right? What do you do with 2-year-olds? Like what, or do they decide what they do?
Well, it's interesting because that was an age group that I always really enjoyed teaching. And certainly with my partnership with Dance Innovations, I teach their Performing Arts Littles program, which is also for children as young as 2. So both of our studios have classes for children that age. And in answer to your question, what do they do? We come in with an idea, and then once that idea is introduced, we roll from there. For example, on Thursday, we came in with the idea of, we were talking about elephants, that our theme was elephants and the trunks and the sounds that they make. But one little girl said, absolutely not. She was Superman. She's Superman, not an elephant. And I was like, okay. So Superman, elephant? No, just Superman. All right. So we had a whole herd of elephants and Superman.
And one Superman.
And so it really works your improvisation skills as a teacher and as a human, rolling with what they bring to the concept. Their creativity is boundless at that age.
Yeah.
They haven't yet learned that there's anything changeable about imagination. Imagination is full forward.
Yeah. Paper Bag Players, on the other hand, is mainly for adults, although there is a good level of cooperation with Free My Muse when that possibility exists. You have auditions. Do the same people kind of show up time after time, or is there quite a wide variety of potential talent in Yorkton that wants to get involved depending on what the production is?
We have a really strong core base in our group. So there are a group of us who will be there, whether on stage, backstage, directing, doing the tech. But the last couple of auditions we did bring out some new faces. So that's really exciting for us to see our group continuing to grow and that those faces are sticking around and becoming members of our group. Yeah.
How large would your core group be?
Our core is probably 12 to 15. Yeah. And there are some that'll come and do a show and then they'll go and then they'll come back again. And then there are those of us that stick around and plan the season and work through the shows. And because Carrie works with mostly under 18, there's not a lot of crossover with our participants. We tend to adult only.
Yeah.
We did do a Narnia show a couple of years ago that involved children. We are looking at doing another big spring production that will involve children. We have reached out, but her kids are always super busy.
Yeah.
So to add another rehearsal schedule to them is a lot. Yeah.
I think it's also important for us to say too that Paper Bag Players and Free My Muse certainly does work together on projects. That when there's a way that we can come in and do something or help with something or offer something, we do. And a lot of our world works with Paper Bag Players too, that we are certainly right now in communication about sharing lighting. And there's lots of different things that we manage to do together. And that's been a gift in my world. We try very hard in this community to not book our shows at the same time.
Yeah. And then Carrie has been a gift to us too. We have brought Carrie out to watch our dress rehearsals and help us out and give us tips and pointers and kind of adjudicate it for us. And we do appreciate that. And we take part very often in her adult workshops and her monologue shows. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover.
Yeah. And I think because we're talking so much about our own different things, I think it's a testament to the way Yorkton has built us that we're able to have that connection to work together and to promote each other's work. And certainly that's how I feel working with Dance Innovations too, that we're all trying to make these great things happen in the community and these great things happening, whether for adults or for youth. We all want to see the community flourish in those different avenues and to get to do some of the caliber of work that they would be doing in larger cities.
How much time do the actors and the directors and people involved, how much time do they need to devote to this? Because rehearsals must take a good chunk of time.
It is a time commitment. We do try to be very upfront from the beginning that it is a heavy time commitment, and we do expect a lot of that because we do want to put on a good show. We do have very high standards on what we are going to put out there, and we expect everybody involved with that show to be able to come up to that standard for us. So typically we start 2 to 3 rehearsals a week. So which would be 2 to 3 hours a night. Yeah. Usually a couple during the week and then a Sunday, something like that. And as we get closer, we do tend to add a 4th rehearsal through the week. And then a couple weeks before the show, it is nightly rehearsals. We have our storage rental out in Ebenezer at their old school, and we rent out their gym, which is when we can set up all of our sets and our lights, and we can run tech rehearsals and full dress rehearsals out there. And those are our heavy rehearsals where it is a lot of time, and it tends to take up full weekends as well as evenings through the week.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant commitment on the part of.
It is. These are big shows, though, and they do require that. I mean, we've never done a show and said, we could have done less rehearsals. That's never happened. But we have fun. We enjoy it. Everybody who's there is, like Carrie said, they want to be there, and it comes together really well. And that's the fun part, seeing all the work that goes into it, and then
The
And I
final
think-
production, yeah.
I think too, like being an adult working on a project with other adults who believe in it and want to be there, that feeds it. That if there's somebody who doesn't really want to be there, very quickly that person is not connecting to the outcome of the project.
Yeah.
That you want the process to be something that's enjoyable for your volunteer actors, but then the performance side of it, that's where you have that extra payoff.
Yeah.
And I think that looking at the expectation Big Players has, like you said, you do good shows and you expect people to follow that mindset of we're here to do something good. That it's not just to be silly.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just something to do on the weekend, that you have an extra step above that you want this to be something that they can feel really proud of.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
whether you're a first-time actor or whether you've been a veteran actor, that you want to feel proud of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we work with our new actors. We have a lot of experience behind us, those of us that have been around a little while. And we do work with them. We do make sure that they're comfortable, and we help them to grow as actors as well. So we do take anybody who has done, thousands of shows before to somebody who is stepping on the stage for the very first time. It doesn't matter to us. We'll work with them.
Well, if you ever need a grumpy old man and he only has to remember 2 lines, give me a call.
You're in. That has been noted.
You've just been cast.
There is a lot of organized activity for children in Yorkton. We talked about why kids choose drama over all the other things they could be doing. You primarily attract youth. What are you hearing from kids as to why they're choosing drama or acting over some of the other things that maybe their peers would be more involved in?
I think that our student base remains small. Our classes are small. We've always recognized, and certainly since a small child, you recognize that sports tend to step further than arts. And that's been an unfortunate side of life, but has been life, whether you're looking at funding provincially, anything, that sports have more. But I feel like another really common recognition between youth groups is that we are all competing for the same time slot of 3:45 until kids go to bed. That all youth extracurricular is during that very small amount of time. And so kids are having to make choices. And often choices are being made by parents. And it's not always about the discipline as much as it is about what the schedule is. That my brother has hockey at this time, and so we can't commit to that time.
Oh.
That we're all in that tiny little venture of chunks of time to be able to make things work. So for us, why kids want to be here specifically, I think that when you're looking at artsy kids, they want a place where they feel like they can be absolutely holistically themselves. And that's what's sustainable for a child. They just want to be themselves. And if they come into our studio and they feel that, then that's where they want to stay. And it's really interesting to get to teach someone from 2 years old until they graduate. And then we've had students who come back and we are able to do specialized shows with them after they've graduated. And it's really interesting to watch that process, but it isn't always the right environment. And I've always promoted to our students that we want them to find what they love. That it's so wonderful to have a passion. And I've been so lucky to have one. My husband is a baseball coach. That's his passion. We're in completely different worlds. But what we want, both of us as educators, teachers, and coaches, is finding what you love.
So you have a young son. You've got a husband who is a baseball coach, and he has a mother who's has a
Yes.
He's well-rounded.
He does. He has a very interesting life. And certainly my husband was coaching in the States until just this year. He just was able to be more full-time here now. And so our son has had the experience of growing up in professional baseball and professional theater, and getting to experience those two different worlds, both on and off, has been so interesting.
And at some point, he's going to have to make a choice.
Well, and
Because he has the same time limitations as all the kids that you're talking about, right?
Exactly. And it's fun watching him. Like, he really likes soccer. And neither of us speak that language. So it's neat just watching children and even adults just finding what they love to do. And certainly, as much as business-wise, yes, we want them to be in theater and acting. It's so much more important to our society for people to find things they love to do. Yeah. And if they're so blessed to get to carry what they love to do into their work, that's the dream. Yeah. And it's rare. And I don't think I knew that was rare. that in my family, it seemed like everyone was doing a job they just loved to do, and that it would crossed over and it was passionate. And until I went to university, did I realize that, oh, lots of people have these as two different things, the work and the job you do and the thing that you love. And I really wanted to be able to have those two things together.
Do you get kids here that it turns out they just don't like it or they're not suited for it?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. There are certainly children who will come in and it's just not what they had thought it would be. And not even in a negative way as much as it is, this just wasn't their thing.
Yeah.
And there's always, I think, kids who will come in and they'll glean something from it. It will give them something. But then the next year they've chosen a different activity. And I support that we never want children or adults to be in an environment like this where they feel like they have to be. If you're dreading coming to class or to rehearsal, there's no joy in that. I don't want to have to be teaching children who don't want to be there.
Yeah.
So certainly we've had kids who it just wasn't right for them. And I'm sure that they were able to find something that was, that even though our community is small, we have so many different things offered for youth when it comes to the arts and when it comes to sports.
What's the upper age limit that you find they stay interested and maybe pursue it into something beyond local and get into, university level type of drama or training education?
Right now, I probably have maybe 15 students who've gone on to continue to pursue theater in university.
Really?
Right now, my student Maggie Robertson is actually doing some amazing things in our film career world. Like she's doing
so good.
Yeah, she's doing some excellent work, and she's at the U of R right now too, studying. And certainly, I've had students who have trained with us and then are in the dance industry or in the music industry. So I think that I always tell our students when they're coming here, I'm not trying to turn people into actors. I'm not sending them with that out the door that they graduate from grade 12 and we're saying, now go be an actor. That isn't what we do. But what I am saying is all of these things that you are learning here, they will be with you wherever you are setting forward in a career. That when you are thinking public speaking, when you're thinking confidence and communication, all of the different things, right from being a team, that is all leading you into whatever career or passion you're choosing. And I always tell my students that when you do graduate, you can still be an actor, but it doesn't have to be your job.
Yeah.
That you can be a part of a community theater organization and do exceptionally strong theater without it being your 9-to-5 job. That I think so many people think they have to choose when they graduate, okay, I either become an actor or I don't. And I think like for you, Pam, like that you're an incredible actor and you're such a strong performer and you have a different job during the day, but that you are, but you're an actor. And that has been a huge part of your life. And you live in a small city and you're still doing that. And I think that's a really important recognition for people to see that you can do those things and you still take it seriously and you still are passionate about it as an actor, but it isn't what you put all of your time into and you still love it. And I think that's so important for people to see that you don't have to give it up. You just may have to decide where you are going to have your main focuses.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you work with adults? If an adult was interested in getting into or learning about acting,
yes.
Is there an opportunity within Free My Muse?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Yes. We don't have an adult class that we offer every semester. And we have certainly offered adult classes, but it's more that people will come and train one-on-one, or we'll do a specialized production that, for example, last year doing Hurricane Women was all a cast of women and those who identify as women who came in to create monologues, and that we presented that for International Women's Day. And that was all adults.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm really lucky to get to also work with Theatre Saskatchewan as an adjudicator.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to go to those festivals and work with those adults. So I love both. That I really appreciate the experience of working with the 2-year-olds and what they learn, but also working with these experienced professionals that I feel like there's so much I'm learning from everybody, and that I get to see that change in how what you have as an imagination when you're 2 really is still there when you're 40. It's just that we've let so many other things grow in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
and that it just takes a little bit of time to come back to that imagination that is right there when you're 2.
Yeah.
And it's hard to remember that playfulness when we're 40, that there's so many other things, but that we still have that same list
and to not be afraid to let that come through, because a lot of people they are maybe a little uncomfortable with letting themselves go and letting that part of them out.
Kids who did attend Free My Muse do come back.
We have a lot of students who come back to teach workshops, or that they're here during one of our shows and they all come and support the younger students, and then they stay after and help put everything away. And it's just, I've always wanted this to feel like a place they could come back to, and a place that could still be like their arts home. And so for those who still have, it's amazing to get to see those kids come back in the door.
I think that is also a lot on you, Carrie, because you are really, really good at creating that safe space for them where they want to come back, because you give them the freedom to just be themselves. It doesn't surprise me at all that her students stick around and want to be a part of her life afterwards.
Paper bag players, you do 2, 3, sometimes more productions a year. What's your annual schedule?
So in the fall is when we would start doing auditions for our fall show, our dinner theater. Sometimes we don't do the fall show. Again, it just depends on how many people we have available, because we are all volunteers and not everybody has a lot of time that they can give to production. So, but we do ideally like to do a fall show, which is just a little show. We've done it at the Land Titles building. We've done a Halloween show in there. And then our dinner theater is typically first, second week in December. So in September, we start auditioning and preparing for those shows. January, we take a little bit of a break, and then we start up again for our spring show.
What kind of becomes the determining factor as to what you're going to produce at any one time?
A lot depends on who steps up and is wanting to direct that show, and then they'll go through plays. So if we're doing a dinner theater, we definitely look more at comedies, because nobody wants to eat dinner and cry.
That's the only way I eat dinner.
So we go through comedies. We look at the size of cast that we want. We look at the set and how plausible it is, because we don't have our own home. We can't leave our setup. We do have to carry things with us. So there's a lot of things that go into picking a play. The festival play that we are looking at doing right now, festivals give us a little more freedom to step out of those comfort zones, do something that is maybe a little less comfortable sometimes.
A little more innovative.
Yeah.
But
So we're looking
a little more off the wall.
Yeah, a little bit, but a little bit more where you can kind of stretch your acting skills or directing skills or your technical skills. You can do things that you don't necessarily have to worry so much about how your audience is going to react, because that plays a lot into what we choose as well. We don't want to choose things that are going to make our audience uncomfortable or offensive. Of course, we don't ever want to do that. But when it comes to festival, you do have that freedom to do something outside of those walls.
You're trying to impress the judges.
Not necessarily. It's more just that you get to do these things that you can't normally do. And as an actor, to be able to play a character that you wouldn't normally get to play, it helps to expand those skills. And it's really quite...
It's really inspiring, because you're looking at these artists who have these opportunities to go forward onto a different platform and to be able to stretch a little bit and be challenged a little bit and then to have feedback. And here, certainly in a community theater sense, that a large part of what we're doing, like you're saying, is ensuring we're promoting pieces that will work for our community audiences.
Yeah.
And then this is more where the artist gets to speak, that you get to step forward and try something different that isn't just about, will we have enough to cover our costs?
Right.
That it's about, we get to put it on a stage and we get to experience the feedback from other professionals and be with other artists who are simply trying to hone their skills and perhaps try something more inspiring.
Exactly.
That you always do. Paperback Players does exceptional theater at that level. When they go into the competitions, they're so strong. Always.
Our festival shows don't necessarily have to make money for us like our other shows do in order to keep us running. Our festival shows are just a show for us.
Speaking of money, you do have, from what I see on your social media, some pretty good support from Yorkton businesses when it comes to sponsoring specific events that you do, and some service clubs. And I'm assuming there's also grant money available from various sources.
Yeah, we've utilized the city grant. We go through SaskCulture, Sask Lotteries. We are a member of Theatre Saskatchewan, and they also offer a lot of grants. Each grant is kind of specific to what you're doing, whether it's you need to buy new equipment, you just need some funding to get your show running. It's very nice.
If you're depending on ticket sales, you wouldn't survive, right?
Yeah, because our dinner theater,
that's the same for most artistic, cultural types of
our dinner theater, like I said, it sells out, but it also costs us a lot to put that show on.
Yeah.
So the funding that we get is quite important, and we appreciate it so much.
We also talked about a topic much in the news these days. In a sports-oriented society and community, and with the kind of online and personal bullying that takes place, are kids who are involved and interested in the arts versus the sports more subject to that? Do you hear about that? Is that a problem?
I think that youth and bullying are simply a target in itself, that I think that it crosses all the boundaries, that it isn't about when we're experiencing bullying. I don't think that it's because necessarily of either of those. I think that bullying is happening rampantly for all of these kids in different ways. And especially when we're looking at the new edition of social media and that all the kids have cell phones. Because I'm in the arts world, I'm hearing more about it from the arts kids. But I also think that in the arts world, we end up with a lot of kids who are very sensitive, very intuitive. Lots of our students are on the spectrum. And then we look at our students who are in sports, and again, not being in that world as much. I think that there is an assumption that kids in sports maybe don't have some of that same sensitivity, which isn't true. That those kids do still have that. It's just not necessarily what their root focus is in their genre. Mm-hmm. But I think that bullying is everywhere all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes we assume it's because of something. But if you talk to kids who are experiencing bullying or adults who are experiencing bullying, they can't necessarily pinpoint the why. And that's what's scary and challenging for those experiencing bullying, is that there isn't a solution that they can change in themselves, because it isn't about them. That the bully is what it's about. Yeah.
Do you allow the kids to have cell phones when they're in class?
No. But I mean, they all have cell phones, and they keep their cell phones off or not with them, because with our teaching, I require them to be present. I also don't let them have gum, though. Like, I put all of that into the same sort of category of we need to be present. We need to be able to use our voices. When they are having a break, they're on their phones more likely, which I have to be careful that I don't jump in with, you have this opportunity to be social. Why are you using your phones? When, as far as I know, this person sitting here is texting, this person sitting over here. It's just not how I grew up, because I was old, that I didn't have a cell phone until I was in my 20s. So I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how cool it is to be able to text each other. And that's just not my communication. And for them, I know that it's different, and I have to honor that too. And I also have to honor that just because they're holding a phone in a room with other kids doesn't mean they are bullying, doing anything mean. Often they're looking at it together and they're seeing something that they're all laughing at. And for the most part, it's nothing that is harmful. I think the experience of screens in our culture is something that I have to be really aware of and careful with in my own child, because I did not grow up with these opportunities, that there was a TV and it had 3 channels and sometimes they worked and sometimes we didn't. So I think that I have to be open-minded to what they are seeing, and at the same time recognize what the boundaries are in an environment like this generally, that we want them to be focusing on their work as artists and actors and not just on their phone.
Yeah.
Well, you must be really young if you had 3 channels, because when I came to Yorkton, we had 1 channel.
Ooh. I know, we were a really big deal. We were one of those fancy 3-channel families.
What has been the response from the community to paper bag players, and has it satisfied the organization, the group? Are you happy with the reception you're getting in Yorkton?
We still get a lot of people who do say to us every year, "Oh, I didn't know you guys were here. Oh, this is so wonderful. I didn't know that this existed." Our dinner theaters do really well. They do really well as Christmas parties. We sell them out 200 people a night. Those are never an issue. Our main stage performances tend to see a little bit of a drop in attendance. We're not entirely sure why. We do the same advertising as we do the dinner theaters, but it just seems to draw us a little bit of a smaller crowd than what the dinner theater does.
A lot of public participation events, whether it was sporting events or cultural events, seem to take a nosedive with the advent of COVID. And not all of it has come back to the same level it was before.
Mm-hmm. In 22, we had our first dinner theater since 2019, and it sold out. Both nights sold out. This past year, in 23, both nights sold out again, 200 people a night. So we haven't really seen a difference post-COVID. During COVID, we were able to do a radio show. We found ways to still be out there and be active and not let people forget about us, those that do know about us. But for us, it just, it doesn't seem to have made a whole lot of difference, which is nice.
Yeah.
We're very lucky that way. Yeah. We're also looking at bringing back our summer shows. We used to do Shakespeare in the Park, and then we turned it into more of a Renaissance festival, and we did a show down at the Rodney Ridge. Got that nice natural bowl shape, so we perform at the bottom, people sit on the hill, we had booths. So we're looking at hopefully bringing that back as well.
The two local drama groups, as well as Yorkton Community Theatre, have been instrumental in the lives of Yorkton people who have gone on in the theatre world. Carrie mentioned Maggie Robertson and other Free My Muse graduates who have and are pursuing careers in acting, whether film or live theatre. Amanda Trapp, who was in Yorkton Community Theatre, is having success in theatre across Canada. Ben Redant has been in Regina's Globe Theatre productions, although his emphasis has been more on performing and producing music. Reaching way back to the Yorkton Collegiate Institute days in the early and mid-1960s, we find Duvie or Duval Lang as a major player, both on the acting side and organizational side in the Calgary theatre scene and in several Hollywood films. Mark Claxton sums up his experience in Yorkton Theatre and the impact it has had on him. Mark, you were involved with both Paper Bag Players and with Yorkton Community Theatre in the late 1990s, early 2000s. What had you done before that as far as acting? Was that your introduction to it?
It had been probably 10 years or more since I'd done any acting at all. I moved to Yorkton. I was close to my 30th birthday. I actually came into town with the intention of staying for 3 months to finish an internship at Yorkton This Week and Enterprise, is what it was called then. And that became a full-time job. And then shortly after that, I found out about Paper Bag Players. I came to Yorkton with the intention of becoming a journalist. And I had really not done any theater since a show I had done with a church I was involved in my very early 20s, I think, in Toronto, actually. That was just kind of a one-off thing. So Yorkton was where, and Paper Bag Players and Yorkton Community Theatre were the groups that reintroduced me to that world and the love that I had always carried for performing and for theater that I had not really given myself permission to explore up to that point.
What impact did that have, your experience in Yorkton, on what you went on to do later?
Yeah, it would be hard to overstate the impact. It profoundly altered the direction of my life, actually. You know, I came to Yorkton intending to pursue a career in journalism, and I left it intending to pursue a career in theater. And that certainly wasn't my plan. when I started doing it again in a really safe, supportive environment, the kind of environment that was provided by Paper Bag Players, by Yorkton Community Theatre, it was no longer possible for me to deny my deep love for theater. Yeah, so after moving to Regina shortly thereafter, I seized an opportunity to audition for a training program that the Globe Theatre had just launched. And that was kind of, I guess, my gateway into beginning to find some professional work on the stage.
I remember seeing you sitting in a booth in the cafe on Corner Gas.
Yeah.
You did parts on there. What else have you done?
Yeah.
Acting is not a get-rich-quick scheme, obviously.
That is for sure. Yeah, I've been doing it now. I've been in theater now in various capacities, acting, directing, producing, a little bit of writing for probably 15 years or more. But through all of that, I've always had to have other work and other jobs, contract work in freelance writing or communications work. Or I've done some teaching just to keep the lights on. For a little while, there was some film happening. I had several appearances on Corner Gas. I had the chance to have a small speaking role in the Corner Gas movie, which was really fun. And it was in a kid's film called Vampire Dog. Had a really fun role as an evil high school principal. And I think maybe my number one, though, favorite experience is getting to do A Christmas Carol at the Globe with my son, my youngest son, who was 8 years old at the time. He was Tiny Tim and I was Bob Cratchit. And we had several amazing weeks of working together in the theater. That's a memory I will just always cherish. And it kind of made all the sacrifices and financial stress and all of that worthwhile. And now he's just an avid theater guy himself. And it's just a joy to watch him do his thing.
We will publish another podcast in about 3 weeks. Visit yorktonstories.ca to hear this and all previous podcasts. And there you can also sign up to our email list so we can let you know when a new podcast is available. Thanks again to our sponsors, Harvest Meats and Grain Millers Canada, both here in Yorkton. And thank you for listening. Your comments and suggestions are always welcome. Get in touch through our website or by emailing Dick, D-I-C-K, @yorktonstories.ca. Let's talk again soon.